What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today it is time. Today we will be doing our last deep dive into the Godzilla Minus One Novelization, at least until an official English translated version is released. In this video, it is time to run through every single difference between the Godzilla Minus One Novelization and the film Godzilla Minus One by compiling all the Easter eggs, all the details, all the additional scenes, all the changes, all the small moments in the movie that are made more overt in the novelization that I've covered in my 3-act breakdown videos, which are on the channel now, into this one comprehensive video. I'll also say those original videos will still hold some value, as because we have 148 things to cover here, I'm not going to be spending as much time on each of these differences as I did in those dedicated videos. So if you want more details on the Godzilla Minus One novelization, more analysis, and more speculation, go check those 3-act breakdowns out. But for now, let's jump into this one. Before we begin, please subscribe. This channel is growing so fast and it needs your help. Subscribe now, join D-Force today. We are well on the way to 101,954 subscribers, and we are the only army on the entire internet who is equipped to take on Godzilla. So please join today. Just a note before we begin, for those of you who haven't seen those other videos, the Godzilla Minus One novelization was written by the writer, director, and VFX supervisor of Godzilla Minus One, Takashi Yamazaki. This shows his original extended ideas for Godzilla Minus One. A lot of the small details that made it into the movie are in the novelization and are made way more overt, which makes it clear that we're not grasping at straws. Takashi Yamazaki uses the Godzilla Minus One novelization to support answers when asked about certain questions. He'll use this novelization to give canonical answers as to why certain things happen in Godzilla Minus One's movie. It shows that Takashi Yamazaki still views this as an incredibly important piece of media, as does Toho, who promotes this as the official extended cut of Godzilla Minus One. It is important to note I translated it myself, so not every translation will be 100% accurate, and it will leave some discrepancy between my translations of the novelization and the official English translations, which should come out later this year. I'll be sure to touch on those differences once that version of the novelization is out as well. And with all of the groundwork laid, let's start to run through the differences between the novelization and the film itself. The novelization starts out by making it clear that Odo Island is covered in bombing holes, which have destroyed the runway in particular. So as Shikishima lands on Odo Island, it shows his skill as a pilot and his cunning. It would simply be impossible for Shikishima to take back off once he landed, as all of the soldiers on Odo Island are stranded there until they're picked up at sea. As long as Shikishima sticks to his story, he could stay on Odo Island until the end of the war without any punishment. The way Shikishima lands, he almost lands in a bombing crater, and in a way, almost crashes as a result. Shikishima lands at about the same exact time his squadron is going on their mission, and so as his squadron is dying, he lands on Odo Island. Shikishima is stated to be a lieutenant in the novelization, showing that he's not very high ranking in the military. Shikishima tears up after the mechanic tells him that the world needs more people like him. It's one of the first bits of kindness he's shown since the war started. Tachibana invites Shikishima to a hot pot dinner that night, and they eat deep sea fish, the ones that Godzilla had killed. During this, some of the mechanics praise Shikishima's bravery and cleverness for dodging his suicide mission, as it's pretty well understood by everybody on the island that's what happened. Here, it's explained that, according to locals, on days when deep-sea fishing picks up on the island, Godzilla will return home. It turns out that the fish actually kill themselves, trying to rush to the surface to escape Godzilla, pressurizing in the process, foreshadowing what will happen to Godzilla at the end of the movie. There is a small discrepancy which occurs in the Godzilla Minus One novelization between that and the film. In the film, Shikishima is seen heading to the shack from the shoreline, where he was watching the fish wash ashore just before Godzilla makes landfall. In the novelization, however, that scene happens earlier. Shikishima then goes to the hot pot dinner, and as he's leaving the shack from the hot pot dinner, Godzilla makes landfall. Godzilla is confirmed to be 15 meters or 16.4 feet tall when he comes on land. Godzilla eats several drums of gasoline before stomping on the remaining barrels, causing them to explode after sparks from the destroyed searchlight, which was on the guard tower, contact the oil. It is explained that Godzilla is lumbering around examining the outpost, watching the flames spread rather than searching for the soldiers, as Godzilla doesn't seem to hold much malevolence at the beginning of the story. Shikishima is absolutely certain that the 20mm gun on his plane would kill Godzilla, but Shikishima believes Godzilla should be left alone by humans, and he should be allowed to return to the sea. He also realizes that opening fire is simply a suicide mission, as Godzilla would probably kill him before the guns could kill Godzilla. Tachibana is also positive the guns will kill Godzilla. If you want to know if it would have actually worked, go check out my deep dive into the Odo Island Godzilla, where I go through all the extra details in this novelization, the film, and interviews from Takashi Yamazaki, which clearly explain the answer to that question. The bodies of Godzilla's victims are given much more gruesome details in the novelization, like how some are so mangled you can hardly tell front from back. Tachibana actually initially doesn't recognize Shikishima. Caught up in his agony, he simply sees someone standing on the island before him. He asks if Shikishima has seen the lower half to a body he's searching for. He only found the torso this morning. He then realizes that it is Shikishima himself who is standing there, and then he begins to yell at him, leading directly into the scene from the movie. This is another important discrepancy between the Godzilla Minus One novelization and the Godzilla Minus One film. In the Minus One novelization, it's stated that Japan surrenders unconditionally just days after Godzilla's attack, meaning at the very least, Hiroshima was most likely hit by an atomic bomb by the time Shikishima was scheduled for his mission. Following this, Shikishima and Tachibana lived together on Odo Island for 6 months, with Shikishima staying out of sight and sleeping outdoors in order to stay away from Tachibana the whole time. Neither one of them visits the original Odo Island village inhabited by the island natives. All of this actually might not line up with Godzilla Minus One in the movie. In the film, the board on Odo Island, which explains the mechanics' plans, states that the beginning of the movie happens in February. The record of G Minus 1.0, which is a deep dive behind the scenes book into the making of Godzilla Minus One, also supports that the beginning of the movie happens in February. The novelization makes Shikishima's mission much more futile, which makes Shikishima's decision so much more understandable. Connecting the dots in the novelization between Shikishima's 6-month gap before returning home and when he arrives in December, it's pretty clear that Japan's unconditional surrender just days after Godzilla's attack places the beginning of the novelization roughly in the summer, somewhere between July and August. In the record of Godzilla Minus 1.0, it's explained that more like a 9-month gap goes by before Shikishima returns home. It is made clear that it's very common knowledge that Shikishima was chosen as a kamikaze pilot, so everybody in his village when he returns home knows exactly what Shikishima did in order to survive. More time is spent in the post-war aftermath. On Shikishima's first night home, he starts to starve to death and realizes it's been over 3 days since he ate. He does want to die from starvation, but the hunger inside him urges him to live for the very first time. The first time this reoccurring theme is iterated in the novelization. Shikishima first meets Noriko in a black market because it's the only way he can find affordable food. It's all leftover scraps from US soldiers. The book stresses Shikishima is pure of heart with an innate desire to help others. This is actually why he blocks Noriko. Shikishima notes that Noriko is the only person who actively tells him she wants him to live and doesn't ask for him to risk his life and die since the war started. It's confirmed that the Shinseimaru's trips last for days at a time. Shikishima's nightmare is a little extended. The remains of the Odo Island outpost burn around him, and the soldiers line up. One of them asks why Shikishima's alive, and before anyone can answer, another man steps forward, one of the men from Shikishima's original suicide mission, which he dodged, who answers, it's because Shikishima's a coward. Shikishima is then so overwhelmed by the nightmare Godzilla, who importantly appears on page 54, pretty cool little Easter egg, unintentional or not, that he starts to believe that the dream world is reality, and he's simply trying to put the pieces together of what's happening to him because he's so overwhelmed. He views his actual life with Noriko and Dakiko as some sort of purgatory, just simply waiting for him to finally die, as he truly believes he's actually lying on the ground trying to cope with Godzilla about to kill him. Shikishima feels as though the photos of the mechanics can look at him and are always asking him silently, why are you still alive? The novelization is a little more bold than the film. It name drops Bikini Atoll Operation Crossroads Baker test directly as being the thing that creates Godzilla. A bunch of birds are vaporized by the nuke as it goes off. It's confirmed here that the Godzilla who's sleeping at the bottom of the ocean is the same Godzilla from Odo Island, so it's the same Godzilla who transforms into the Godzilla. Godzilla's transformation is given far more detail and is far more graphic. Godzilla is burned to ashes, his skin boiled and ripped away until there's little flesh remaining. The novelization tries to paint a much more sympathetic portrayal of Godzilla and his transformation. Godzilla Godzilla is confirmed to have a natural regeneration factor. It's why he's been able to stay alive since presumably the time of the dinosaurs. However, it's never stated how old he is. Godzilla's regeneration is hijacked by radiation, trying to restore him to his original form. There's so little of Godzilla left that his regeneration factor overcompensates and starts growing like a cancer. Godzilla's skin goes from a thick leathery flesh to rock-like texture. Godzilla's spines grow and branch off incredibly fast and painfully. Godzilla's skin keeps layering itself like an ancient oyster. Godzilla also recognizes that this is happening to him and realizes he is no longer the creature he was before this started. He also, importantly, recognizes and is furious at humanity for having done this to him, realizing that the nuke is a human weapon and that this happened to him because of them. The novelization boldly states this is the moment Godzilla was born. They've now switched from calling Godzilla a different name. It's something along the lines of like Gojira, kind of like in Godzilla Singular Point, that's how it's written, but it is still pronounced as Gojira, to Godzilla with the kanji Gojira. Godzilla's transformation extends into the literal written page of the novelization. More time is spent on the small day-to-day activities of Shikishima, Noriko, Sumiko, and the Shinseimaru crew. They all have a much deeper friendship and connection with Noriko. More attention is given to Japan's Reconstruction and the small intricacies of that. It is implied that Akitsu wants kids, and he has a very strong fatherly instinct towards Akiko. Akiko calls Shikishima To-chan. Culturally, this is an even more endearing and much more friendly way to say dad. It means that the bond she feels for him is beyond love and respect and goes into friendship. The gang winds up scolding Shikishima much harsher for him saying Akiko isn't his daughter, as she begins to cry, Akitsu calling himself Akiko's uncle in the process. There's a small moment after the dinner where Shikishima looks at photos of the Odo mechanics. Noriko approaches from behind, and originally she thinks he's laughing. Then she makes a comment about how she and Koichi aren't like that. It's this very awkward moment, with her feeling clearly hurt about what he said at dinner. Shikishima is so drunk and shameful that he can't even turn to face her. Noriko starts to fight back her sorrows when she reveals that she got her desk job in Ginza. It seems that Noriko is doubly heartbroken, as she expected Shikishima to beg her to stay and to finally confess his love for her, and the fact that he doesn't, it makes her realize all the more why she needs this job, and confirms to her that she needs to leave eventually, as Shikishima seems to not feel the same way about her that she feels about him. She feels as though she's holding him back from living his true life. Shikishima is actually equally heartbroken in this scene for himself. He was hoping he would have the courage to do more to convince her to stay, and again, it's like his cowardly instincts take over. He can't make the jump, and he couldn't confess to her how he feels. It seems some of Godzilla's radioactive flesh is recovered after he downs the US submarine, alerting the Americans to his connection to the atomic bombs. They immediately realize that the creature that's hunting them in the Pacific is their fault for testing in Bikini Atoll. Meanwhile, Godzilla is on a pure revenge quest. The US isn't able to retaliate against Godzilla as he wages war with their ships in the Pacific because any sort of retaliation might alert the Soviets, and so it could escalate into war. Therefore, Godzilla is left to rampage and sink any ships he comes across. From Godzilla's perspective, this is how he gets revenge for what they did to him. It's revealed the death of the Odo Island mechanics is a popular story for soldiers in the war, but they all believe this was the result of a massive suicide attack led by the United States against Odo Island. One day passes after the discovery of the downed US tanker to Godzilla's attack. In that time, Shikishima can't sleep and spends his nights repairing the recovered mines. Shikishima then mentions how much of a delicacy it is to have coffee in post-war Japan, and how it shows that Reconstruction is truly on its way. The deep-sea fish that then begin to float up have their eyes blown out, as well as their guts bulging out of their mouths. This is caused by them trying to surface to get away from Godzilla, and directly foreshadows what Godzilla will wind up looking like at the end of the movie. Akitsu's very iconic line, "Somebody's gotta do it," is translated here as "somebody's gotta get the short end of the stick." Godzilla ambushing the Kaishin-maru shows his battle experience, and seems to be a similar tactic he uses to catch fish, swimming up fast from beneath them. Akitsu realizes upon the destruction of the Kaishin-maru that to oppose Godzilla is to confront God. Multiple times in the Godzilla Minus One novelization, it's made clear that Godzilla isn't just a monster, he is a god incarnate, and Akitsu first realizes that in this moment. After the iconic sequence where Godzilla does battle with the Takao, leading to his incredible atomic breath reveal at sea, it's made clear that Godzilla didn't simply forget about the Shinseimaru. It's not like he fights the Takao and then forgets about them and then leaves. Godzilla's fully aware of them, which is why he rises up to roar triumphantly. The reason Godzilla Godzilla does not continue his attack on the Shinseimaru is because simply the injuries he sustained from his own atomic breath, it was just too much. He's like, okay, that's it, I'm done. And that's why Godzilla leaves. It's more like Godzilla has made his point, and so he's done here. There's a small moment where Noriko and Akiko show up to get Shikishima from the hospital after he wakes up. Later that night, Shikishima lies to Noriko, telling her that his injuries came from a mine that wasn't defused properly and wound up blowing up, damaging the Shinseimaru. Shikishima listens to Noriko's heartbeat after his big confession and subsequent mental breakdown. It is her heartbeat itself that pulls him out of his traumatic episode. The next morning, it's watching Akiko drink the miso soup that makes Shikishima realize once and for all he truly did survive Odo Island, and this is the real world. Before Godzilla arrives in Ginza, he first makes landfall in Shinagawa, the same way he does in Godzilla 1954. Akiko shows off her ability to juggle for Shikishima before the radio broadcast announces Godzilla's presence. In the movie, this was changed to the two of them sitting and playing. There's a bit more of a public panic in Shikishima's village as the air raid sirens blare. The village panics as people expect an enemy bombing raid to begin. Akiko doesn't know what's going on, but she realizes how serious the radio broadcast is. And it's here where Shikishima asks her to go to Sumiko's house by herself. She agrees, and this sets up for when she does the same at the end of the movie when she finds that he's gone. The chaos in the streets of Ginza is slightly extended here, with cars crashing and people being trampled to death. Godzilla's foot is said to be around 33 feet in diameter as it crashes down. Godzilla's attack is restructured ever so slightly, with the bridge destruction coming before the train is stopped. It's explained that Noriko rides the Yamanote line from Tokyo Station to Yarakocho Station. Godzilla's roar in Ginza acts like a shockwave, rattling windows of the trains. There is a panic in the train where everybody piles up on the exit and they're all trying to get out at the same time, and therefore nobody can make it out in time. Noriko leaps into the Sotobori River. Originally, I thought she hopped into the Hibiya Moat. However, these are still part of the same water system. The Sotobori River is the river that ran under the Tsukiyabashi Bridge, which is the bridge Godzilla stomps on and explodes, and is also the same bridge Godzilla breaks in Godzilla 1954. The Sotobori Outer Moat was part of the moat that wrapped around the Imperial Palace, and most of that was paved over and turned into usable land. A group of reporters across the street from the reporters we see in Godzilla Minus One is killed as Godzilla's tail strikes through the Asahi newspaper building before hitting the Nippon Theater. It's here where we also find out the Ginza attack happens in May, and it's a beautiful sunny day. The main reporter on the Mazda building finds Godzilla to be a terrifyingly beautiful creature and feels as though Godzilla is a divine force and a god moments before Godzilla kills him. Noriko is still catching her breath from almost being drowned by the train car hitting the river behind her and the turbulent waters making it hard for her to get on land as pieces of the Nichigeki Theater begin to rain down upon her. That's right, there's an extended sequence with Noriko that takes place at the same time as Godzilla's attack on the Nippon Theater. As Noriko escapes the carnage, she uses the very last bits of her energy, struggling to stay standing as Godzilla then turns around, beginning to close in behind her. She wonders if Godzilla's feet crushing her will bring her a sort of comfort, putting an end to all of her pain. It turns out that it's actually the air raid sirens themselves, sending her back into a post-traumatic stress-induced episode, as she's actually reliving and remembering her parents burning in the fires in front of her during the air raids, and it's only once Shikishima grabs her that she's pulled back to reality, pulled back to the moment, and remembers her mission to live. This is why she begins to run with Shikishima. Not all of the tank shots land. Some of the tanks that are blasting Godzilla from way out at the Diet building wind up missing and hitting nearby buildings, exploding those as well. Yamazaki then explicitly states Godzilla's atomic breath functions like an implosion-type atomic bomb. The main blast zone for Godzilla's atomic breath is stated to be a 6-kilometer radius. The heat ray also damages Godzilla in Ginza, much like it does at sea and at the end of the movie. Godzilla has to take a moment to heal before roaring. 1 day passes before the cleanup in Ginza begins, with over 30,000 people killed. The full blast radius, although we don't totally know what that means, is stated to be around 12 kilometers. Using the Nuke Map website, we can put a Fat Man-styled bomb, an implosion-styled atomic bomb, to create a fireball of around 6.41 kilometers squared and a light blast radius of 12 kilometers. This is pretty much the exact same measurements Takashi Yamazaki used. In order to do this, you would need a bomb with a yield of 1,050 kilotons. I believe this means it's 1.05 megatons. That means Godzilla's atomic breath isn't in atomic bomb radius, it's in hydrogen bomb radius, which is pretty crazy. News reports pretty much immediately connect Godzilla's radiation to Bikini Atoll. While it's unknown if the Japanese public is aware of this, certainly the Japanese government knows America's to blame. It is said that body parts of Godzilla fell off in the city, but are so radioactive that they can't be collected right away. This is a little different than the movie saying that shards of Godzilla were recovered in the city. The people leaving Noriko's wake are confirmed to be her surviving co-workers from Ginza. Shikishima winds up drinking sake at the wake, and it's said that his soul seems to have died in Ginza with Noriko. We then find out that Godzilla's roar was recovered from the rooftop reporters in Ginza. This is the roar later on used in the movie to lure Godzilla around sea. It's also stated that Godzilla is estimated to weigh around 20,000 tons. The Shinden is said to fly at over 400 knots, accurate to real life, which means the Shinden can fly at about 470 miles per hour. Pretty dang fast. If you're wondering what Shikishima's plan is when he's trying to find out where Tachibana is, Shikishima gets the addresses of all of the former soldiers who worked with Tachibana. He then sends them letters asking them to pass this information on to Tachibana, which is why Tachibana winds up tracking those letters back to Shikishima. Shikishima's letter is actually written in full in the novelization. We get to know exactly what it is he's saying to those soldiers. Shikishima is just telling full-on lies. He says that he needs to find Tachibana so that the truth can finally come out. It's said that the destruction of Odo Island happened because of US island hopping forces, but Shikishima's letter explains the supposed truth. It's that Tachibana recklessly opened fire on an innocent US naval vessel passing offshore. The United States had simply no choice but to retaliate, and during their assault on the island, Tachibana fled like a coward and hid in the mountains as all the young mechanics were slaughtered. Shikishima signs the letter claiming that his purpose in life is to expose Tachibana and denounce him until the day he dies. This is what provokes Tachibana into retaliation. Tachibana is actually a little more upset about the fact that Shikishima sent those lies to his former soldier friends rather than the fact that he's spreading lies about him in the first place. Noda agrees to give Shikishima time to find Tachibana out of fear that if Shikishima fails, he will simply lose the drive to live. Noda believes that finding Tachibana is the only thing keeping Shikishima alive. We find out that the Toyo Balloon Company's installation of their gear on the destroyers had some sort of complication delaying them. This is why they need to join the ship's 3-hour trip from Yokosuka to the trench before they fight Godzilla. Otherwise, they won't have time to finish the installation. It is a little hard to tell in the movie, but in reality, they have to sail around the Miura Peninsula. That's how you get from the Yokosuka Naval Base to the Sagami Trench. It's likely that the land masses we see in the background distance in Godzilla Minus One's final battle are actually off the Boso Peninsula or Oshima Island. However, it's stated Godzilla specifically makes landfall off the sea of Inshoima Island. It's revealed Mizushima is the most nervous out of anybody about fighting Godzilla due to his lack of battle experience, but he puts on the face of confidence to hype up his friends. Sumiko is aware there's a plan to fight Godzilla, and she knows Shikishima's involved, so when he is deeply sincere to her, she knows something's going to happen soon and fears what Shikishima has planned. Shikishima and Akiko have a much longer exchange the night before the final battle with Godzilla. She asks him when Mom is coming home, and when he doesn't answer, she realizes she said something upsetting, but doesn't know what. She then asks if Dad is okay, and Shikishima responds saying yes, and that he is her dad. He owns the title. She picks up on the sadness in him, and using intuition that only children have, or that's at least what the novelization states, she then asks if Shikishima isn't gonna come home either. Shikishima tries to comfort Akiko, but when she can't explain why she doesn't feel well and why she feels like he isn't gonna come home, she begins to cry. As Shikishima holds her, he makes up his mind for a second time, that this mission must succeed. It's like it's the first time again that he decides to go through with this mission. This time his plan is to protect Akiko, rather than to avenge Noriko. Shikishima doesn't sleep the night before the attack. Instead, he spends that time watching Akiko, understanding and fearing that this is the last time he will ever see her. That morning, he also specifically grabs the Odo mechanic's photos and Noriko's picture as he heads out. It's made clear that remembering Akiko by using the photo she drew him is what gives Shikishima his final courage to take on Godzilla and is what stops his shaking for the last time. This is the only time in the film that Shikishima isn't fighting for himself in one way or another. From dodging his suicide mission to not attacking Godzilla on Odo Island to fighting Godzilla on the Shinseimaru, all of Shikishima's decisions have benefited himself first and foremost. This time the decision to sacrifice himself only benefits Akiko. This is why he has so so much clarity in the end. This is just a little detail, but Shikishima's money and note to Sumiko at the end of the movie parallel her giving him the rice at the start of the film. The underwater speaker, which plays Godzilla's roar, is a retooled speaker meant to throw off submarines during the war, tricking their sonar. Godzilla fears that the roar is an invasion of his territory by a hostile force, and so he's on a defense mission. The ship Godzilla throws into shore seems to collide with the building which the meeting was held in the night before. Slightly more attention to detail is paid to how Shikishima flies the Shinden. For instance, due to the way it's built, it's constantly pulling to the left. It's specified that Godzilla pays no mind to the humans on the dock as he comes ashore. Perhaps he's still worried about the invasion of his territory from a rival Godzilla, not realizing that the speaker was the thing creating his roar. As Shikishima flies over the villages, he pictures each house as having an Akiko, Noriko, and Shikishima in need of protecting. Godzilla's final attack happens in Kamakura. A slight difference from the novelization to the film happens here, as Sumiko puts Akiko to bed before getting the telegram, rather than playing with her as seen in the movie. Shikishima is surprised by how he finds himself using training maneuvers in order to outrun Godzilla. Godzilla isn't injured by the Shinden, but instead views it as a pest that needs to be exterminated. When Godzilla sees the destroyers coming at him, he remembers the Takao's bombardment, and how he had to use his atomic breath in order to defeat it. That's why he starts with his atomic breath this time around. It's also pointed out that the naval ships survive the nuke's wave the same way you would survive a tsunami, by taking it head on so you don't get rolled over. While people were aware that Godzilla possesses a heat ray, no one had ever seen it. It's said that no one in Ginza who saw the atomic breath survived other than Shikishima, who the novelization points out only survives due to a miracle. This is why after witnessing Godzilla's heat ray in person, people are so much more hesitant to continue with the mission when they already knew he had an atomic breath. The only people who have ever seen the atomic breath and survived are the Shinseimaru crew members themselves. It seems that the man who asks them to abandon the mission right after the heat ray goes off is named Haruo, perhaps a reference to Haruo Nakajima, who played the original Godzilla. It's made clear that without the Shinden distracting Godzilla, he would have immediately sunk the Yukikaze as it started to circle him. That was his primary target. The reason the Yukikaze has a crane on it and not the Hibiki is because it needs to elevate the cable over the Hibiki so that they don't wind up catching each other or severing the cable when the two ships loop one another or damaging the ships in the process. This is also why the destroyers need to be so close to each other, as they need to be close enough to allow the lift of the crane to get over the highest point of the Hibiki. Godzilla is unsure what the cable is, but he is smart enough to know that the cable is a direct danger to him, which is why he begins to charge his atomic breath. It's stated that Godzilla does not feel the pressure change upon being sunken until the Freon bubbles run out. All the water hitting him at once actually causes the pressure change to happen instantaneously. It squeezes Godzilla so hard he loses his atomic charge. Godzilla is particularly vulnerable through areas he was previously injured, either through his recent atomic blast or where he's taken damage earlier. The pressure bubbles begin to form in these wounds. From Godzilla's perspective, it's stated this is yet another moment of suffering in such a short period of time. Again, Godzilla's fully aware that it's the humans who are doing this to him. It's said that Godzilla could either use his heat ray to erupt both the ships from underneath at sea like he did with the Takao, or he could pull the cables and potentially sink the ships using their own methods against them. Perhaps the reason Godzilla doesn't unleash his atomic breath is because he's already quite wounded. It's then explained that if Godzilla wins the ending battle in Godzilla Minus One, he would come on land with enormous wrath and burn everything to the ground. No area would be left untouched by his devastation, as his revenge mission now extends beyond military vessels and into all of humanity. Godzilla's attack on Ginza was more about claiming the territory for himself, but if he comes on land again, it will be about payback. Akitsu calls himself Kiyoshimojin of Iria after seeing Mizushima and the tugboats. I don't know what this means, but it seems to be an expression referencing the goddess of safe childbirth, parenting, and luck. It is directly referenced here that Godzilla looks like the deep sea fish he caused to surface throughout the film as he is pulled up from the depths. The men on the ships actually feel guilty upon seeing Godzilla surface all wounded, feeling as though this is simply something humanity never should have had to do. They feel like they are killing a god. As Godzilla charges his atomic breath for the last time and is about to kill everybody, Noda is trapped between the feeling of, I did everything I could and this can't happen, we've come this far. This isn't from the Godzilla Minus One novelization, but I do think it's cool. Takashi Yamazaki confirms that if Godzilla was allowed to continue charging his atomic breath, he would have exploded either GMK or 1995 style, killing himself and everybody else in the process. Maybe this would have been a more definitive way to kill Godzilla and stop his regeneration from happening, but everybody would have died in the process. It's also possible he just revives from it anyways. It is confirmed confirmed in the novelization that the Shinden has a built-in German-made ejector seat installed. Tachibana may have repaired this ejector seat, but he is not the one who installed it. At the end of the movie, as the men begin to salute, it's stated that they are saluting Godzilla, as they view Godzilla in this moment as a final goodbye to all of those lost in the war. Godzilla, in many ways, is the ultimate victim of the war, as he, for 3 years, has embodied its legacy of destruction and misery. Noriko's line at the end of the movie in the hospital translates a little differently here. She specifically states, "Is Koichi's war over?" which is not the line she says in the movie itself. The mark on Noriko's neck is described as a black bruise, not some sort of blood curse or something else, just simply a black bruise. Just some more things that were expanded upon through the visual context of the movie itself. Finally, as the novelization ends, multiple chunks of Godzilla sink into the deep sea. Only the largest chunk begins to regenerate. What'll happen to the rest of those, and what'll happen to the body parts scattered throughout Ginza? I don't know. We could have a world of Godzillas on our hand in the next movie, or it's entirely possible they'll never be referenced again. Let's wait and see in Godzilla Minus 2, or whatever they're gonna call the next movie. And that will do it for the Godzilla Minus One novelization. That is every change, every additional detail, every expanded upon theme and idea in the Godzilla Minus One novelization that either didn't make it into the film or was changed at some point in the journey to the film. What did you think of all of this? Comment below and let me know. Huge thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I also want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons that I was able to get the Godzilla Minus One novelization to do these videos with you in the first place. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.